Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to those of you who are joining me here in my basement. When I was sound checking with Mark Rothstein earlier, he commented that this is a different Zoom background than he's used to for me. I'm mixing things up this evening. We are joining together tonight on this Shabbat, this Erev New Year's Eve, or Erev New Year. And we'll begin with Shalom Aleichem, welcoming in the Sabbath angels. And I'm welcoming all of you in. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Shalom, shalom, Shabbat shalom, and welcome. I recently went to the bookstore in the mall, Indigo, which I find to be a real sanctuary. A sanctuary for me that allows me to kind of just walk up and down these beautiful big hallways full of books, looking for inspiration, waiting for the opportunity to pull one off the shelf and be inspired. And so as a kavanah for us for this evening, I wanted to offer this prayer that is written in the form of a poem called Everyone Sang. Everyone Sang by Siegfried Sassoon. Everyone suddenly burst out singing, and I was filled with such delight. As prisoned birds must find in freedom, winging wildly across the white orchards and dark green fields, on and out of sight. Everyone's voice was suddenly lifted, and beauty came like the setting sun. My heart was shaken with tears, and horror drifted away. Oh, but everyone was a bird, and the song was wordless, and the singing will never be done. I've been reading this poem over and over again this week. It's in a book, an anthology for hope called Bright Poems for Dark Days. These days are indeed quite dark. We are literally in one of the darkest times of year, although we are emerging from that and light is starting to be more plentiful. But during this dark time, a time when many of us are feeling a little bit confused, we're neither here nor there, we're not sure if we're supposed to be inside or coming back to our lives, are we supposed to be isolating or just reimagining what normal means, none of us really know. And that imagery of a caged bird finding freedom and lifting their voice in this wordless melody, a nigun, in fact, really inspired me. The idea that all of us, each of us, have a songbird inside of us. And so tonight, even though we're not in our chapel, and we're not joined together in song in a physical way, I want to offer you the opportunity to feel that freedom, that idea that we are each a songbird. We each have the freedom and the chance now on Shabbat to lift our voices together in song, despite the fact that we are separated physically by distance. So as we light the Shabbos lights, mine are in my window right behind my computer, we're going to light them together. We'll sing the blessing together. And I will invite you to lift your voice, to feel that freedom, and to really revel in the splendor of Shabbat. So we light the candles. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen. We'll turn now to our Kabbalat Shabbat as we welcome in the Sabbath bride through words of Lecha Dodi. You can find Lecha Dodi in your prayer books, which are downloadable on the website on page, bear with me, on page 6. Please do join me. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, peni Shabbat mikabela. 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 Shamor v'sachor v'dibur echad, Hishmi'anu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, v'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, peni Shabbat mikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, peni Shabbat mikabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelecha, ki hi mekor haberacha, mehirosh mikedem nesucha, sof na'aseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, peni Shabbat mikabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, peni Shabbat mikabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha ובצהרה, תוך אמונה Continuing with our service, we turn ahead to the following page for the Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkadar v'yitkadash shmei Rabba be'alema diverach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'zman kariv ve'imeru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabba mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudesha berichu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushmechata v'nechemata damiran be'alema ve'imeru Amen. I'll invite you, if you are able, to please rise for the Baruch Hu, the call to prayer. We'll join together now in the words of Ma'ariv Aravim. I'm going to share my screen, so please do read along with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher bidvaro Ma'ariv Aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna meshane itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umesader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or. Uma'avir yom u'mevi layla, umavdil ben yom u'ven layla, Adonai tzvaot shemo, Elchai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim. Amen. Turning ahead to our prayer, Ahavat Olam. This is a prayer about the love that God shows us. And it is written the way we read it. It is written in a responsive format. And so I'm going to read both of the parts, but please do read along with me as I share my screen so that we can be in community together. In each age, we receive and transmit Torah. At each moment, we are addressed by the world. In each age, we are challenged by our ancient teaching. At each moment, we stand face to face with truth. In each age, we add our wisdom to that which has gone before. At each moment, the knowing heart is filled with wonder. In each age, the children of Torah become its builders and seek to set the world firm on a foundation of truth. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. If you are still standing, please be seated. We now come to the words of Ve'ahavta, another prayer that addresses God's love and our loving relationship with God. And when we're together, we chant these words taken straight from our Torah and set to the cantillation that we know so well, the sound of our Torah. But since we are not together in the room where we would be chanting this out loud, I thought this would be a beautiful opportunity to read this interpretive translation of Ve'ahavta. It captures the sentiment in such a way that I always find it incredibly moving. Love Adonai your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work. Whether you are tired or you are rested, let them guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai your God. Perhaps I was feeling called to that reading because this week in our Torah portion, we are actually encountering that name of God, the way that God identifies God's self, of saying, I am Adonai your God. We receive that this week in our Torah portion, and we learn about the way in which God upholds God's end of the covenant, despite challenges and challenging times that the Israelites have had to weather together. But the beautiful thing about this story is that redemption does in fact come. And our prayer of redemption, our prayer of freedom that celebrates our experience of being released from bondage and meeting God on the shores of the sea. Mi chamocha. Please join me. וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. אמן. Page 13. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and our coming, to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over all of us, over all your people, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Amen. We come now to our prayer of healing, moving from asking God for shelter, protection from all of the evils and the challenges of the world outside, and moving inside to asking for healing of our minds, of our bodies, and indeed of our spirit. Our congregational community this evening is thinking of Cindy Baker, Ed Goldberg, Al Intilli, David Rothman, Tammy Schwartzberg, Shmuel Ben Rivka, Teresa Schlossberg, Eliana Liora Bat Shoshana Leah, and Naomi Bat Sarah, along with Shoal Bear. If there are those in your life who you are thinking of this evening, those who could use that bolstering of body, mind, and spirit, we will invite you to lift your voice with us now as we turn to page 14 and join in words of the Mishaberach. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofeh HaCholim. We bless you, Adonai, who heals the sick. Turning ahead now to the Amidah, I will invite you to please rise if you are able, and I will share my screen so that we can pray along together. Adonai שפתי תפתח ופי אגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Velohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Velohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'koneh Hakol, V'zocher Chastei Avot ve'imahot, Umevi Geula livnei b'neihem, Lema'an Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol, Atah ra ve'hoshia, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Vishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umidom elach, Melech memit umechaye, Umatmiach Yeshua, B'ne'eman atah lehachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai mechayei hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated. We take a few moments now to engage in silent prayer, Tfilat Halev, the prayers of our heart. I love using a prayer book. I love holding it in my hands. I like turning the pages. I like having an opportunity to peruse when perhaps my mind wanders from the prayer that we are actually reading. But what I love the most about it is that the space between the lines in the prayer, the space between the pages, leaves room for the prayers that are written inside of us. No book, no matter how many pages are in it, no matter how many sticky notes I put in it, will ever contain all of the prayers that we need God to hear. And on this eve of our new year in our secular world, perhaps there is something that you need God to hear. A message, a request, something that has been on your heart or in your mind, something that perhaps you even need to say out loud. So for this moment, we'll close our eyes, we'll take just a brief moment of pause, and we'll give ourselves the opportunity to talk to God about whatever it is that we need to. And perhaps if all of our hearts turn inward together, that resounding sound of that wordless melody will reach God. We pray in silence. Shabbat Shalom once again, everyone. Bear with me as I get all of my things in order. This week we read from Parshat Va'era. It is a familiar story because we read this story every single year on Passover from start to finish. We know how it begins and how it ends. God tells Moses that God has heard the Israelites' cries and has remembered the covenant that was made with the generations that have come before, and God promises to redeem the people and tells Moses that he should go and tell the people that God will do so. So Moses, dutiful as ever, goes and shares this extraordinary news with the people. But the Torah tells us, Lo sham'u et Moshe. The people did not, or perhaps could not, hear Moses. Sham'u. Now we know that the Torah does not use any extra words. It's not a particularly flowery text. There's not a lot of descriptive language. So when there are details that are shared, they are pertinent to the story. Whatever story they are meant to tell, whatever detail they are meant to offer, we are meant to pay attention. That word sham'u comes from the word lishmoa, which can be to hear, but can also be to listen. So which was it? Either the people weren't listening, couldn't hear him, or perhaps it goes even deeper. The commentator Rashi interprets this phrase, lo sham'u, not as a literal inability to hear, but rather as the people's inability to accept words of comfort. Now, any one of us knows that when we are down in the dumps, we are sad, we are grieving, when we are weary or sick at heart, it can feel frustrating, if not hurtful, when someone tries to comfort us. Whether people say the right thing or the wrong thing, if you are not in a space to be able to hear those words of comfort, if you are not ready to receive comfort, it's neither comforting nor helpful, even though the speaker might think they are. The text goes on to explain that the people's spirits were crushed, mikotzer ruach, by the difficult and even traumatic experience of Egyptian bondage in which they were living. As a reader of this narrative, it might be easy to look at the Israelites' unwillingness or inability to accept this miraculous news with an open heart with judgment. The Israelites, after all, were known to be a somewhat kvetchy bunch. We, the readers, know how the story ends. We know that God will indeed fulfill the promise of liberation and redemption, and that the people will reach the promised land, and eventually freedom will come. We know that there is a light at the end of their very long 40-year tunnel. So when we hear these tales of their resistance or even their rejection of God's compassionate impulses, it can be easy to look at them with judgment and disappointment. These are the same people who, in just a few short chapters, will complain about the monotony of eating manna, the gift from heaven that God sends down to sustain them as they wander through the wilderness. The people who, in a fit of impatience, build the golden calf and worship it, while Moses encounters God and receives the 10 Commandments. And yet, the text writes that their spirits have been crushed by anguish. Rashi goes on to explain that if one is experiencing such anguish like the Israelites were experiencing, that the individual breath comes in short gasps, that we cannot catch our breath. Now, Rashi was not, to my knowledge, a psychologist or a mental health professional. However, what he seems to be identifying is that the Israelites are experiencing a fairly significant trauma response. These people have lived through great times of darkness. They have been victims of their circumstances and powerless to change it for so long. They are tired, they are broken, and they are unable to see their way out of it. I've been seeing a lot written about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, something that we often think of in terms of folks who come back from some experience of war or a significant experience of trauma, who have physical reactions that cause them to experience a reliving of whatever trauma they have gone through. And how this time in which we are living right now, of having to re-examine what it means to be out in the world, to re-examine what it means to interact with other people. For some of us, that may have meant that we had to cancel plans, or we had to quarantine again. Perhaps that even meant that you got sick over these last couple of weeks. Whatever that was, you may have found yourself experiencing, to some degree, a traumatic response to having to relive what we thought we had left behind. The Mayo Clinic explains that the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder fall under a handful of categories: intrusive memories, avoidance, negative changes in thinking and mood, including hopelessness about the future and a difficulty experiencing positive emotions, and finally, changes in physical and emotional reactions, such as always being on guard for danger, irritability, aggressive behavior, and engaging in self-destructive activities. Now, when I read this list and I thought about it in the context of the Israelites and their experience, I thought to myself, it hits spot on. We, the readers, have the privilege of a 360-degree perspective. We can see clearly how just a little bit of faith and perhaps more than a bit of patience would yield great miraculous reward for these people. We know that they will be okay. But they are weary. They are tired. They are worn down and they are worn out. Their spirits are crushed, broken, and frustrated, and they have reached their wits' end. Their faith has been tested, perhaps one too many times. Sound familiar? Neither Moses nor God have a ton of credibility with the people at this point. No sooner does God promise that the people will be redeemed than we learn that God goes on to harden Pharaoh's heart. At first, the people must be met with even more severe oppression from Pharaoh. Things get worse before they're going to get better. And it will be a long process to reach the promised land. It neither began with them, nor will it end with them. And yet, it is promised to them, and the process the journey required to reach their destination is, fortunately or unfortunately, part of the covenant too. Recently, a bat mitzvah student of mine was studying this parsha, and she was very taken with the fact that we read this story during this time of year rather than closer to the actual holiday when we celebrate what happens in this story. She wanted to understand why, if the story is part of our celebration in the springtime, why it wasn't set up so that we read it in the springtime rather than the dead of winter. She and I had a few conversations about this, and we came up with that perhaps we, like the Israelites, during this dark time of year, need to be reminded to hold on to hope for the future. That where there is darkness, there will always eventually come light. Just like the Israelites who were unwilling or unable to hear Moses' promise of redemption, when we are in the darkness, it can feel almost impossible to imagine that light will eventually come. As I said before, people may try to tell us, they may try to offer us words of comfort and hope. They may say the right thing or the wrong thing, but we may not be ready to hear it. I'll say for me, these last few weeks have felt like a dark tunnel through which we must pass. Just when I thought we had a handle on how to live in this next version of normal, in waltzed the Omicron variant just in time to wreck my holiday plans, make some of us sick, make us scared, and for many of us, myself included, send us back to a place of darkness that we thought we might have left behind when we parted ways with 2020. But just as my book of poems for dark days suggests, even on the darkest of days, there is light that is to come. And so I want to conclude with one additional poem. One additional poem that addresses that dichotomy of the darkness and the light. This is called Of Being by Denise Levertov. I know this happiness is provisional. The looming presences, great suffering, great fear, withdraw only into peripheral vision. But ineluctable, this shimmering of wind in the blue leaves, this flood of stillness widening the lake of the sky, this need to dance, this need to kneel, this mystery. The poet reminds us that no matter how dark, how dire, there is always cause for wonderment and joy. There is always a spark, no matter how small, of hope. And we might not always be able to see it, but it is there. So if you are having a tough time right now, if the darkness of winter and the stillness of this moment in our world is causing you sadness or sorrow, Shamati, I hear you. I really hear you. I recognize what you are feeling. I'm not only hearing you, but I'm listening too. And perhaps if we open up our ears and our hearts to one another, if we reach through these screens like we know how to do, if we face our fears and we tackle this together, there will be indeed light that follows the darkness. And we can be that hope for each other. Shabbat Shalom. We'll turn back now to the words of our Siddur, to the words of Aleinu, and if you are able, I will invite you to please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad, ushemo echad. We now come to the words of Mourner's Kaddish. These words honor the lives of those in our families and in our community whom we have lost. As part of honoring their memories, when you hear the name of a loved one who you may have lost, if you feel so inclined, we'll invite you to rise to honor their memory. At the conclusion of the names, we'll invite the entire congregation to rise as one sacred community, joining together in words of Kaddish. We are in a period of Shloshim for Richard Zeitlin, Pearl Schottenfeld, William Ornstein, Lynn Kramer Goldfarb, Howard Cooperman, and Norman Arnell. And it is the anniversary of the passing, this Shabbat, their Yartzeit, of Julian Bassin, Alfred Berger, Terry D. Berkeley, Mildred Burns, Robert Cohen, Jacob Dultz, Madeline Eisenberg, Ida K. Feldman, Francis Feldman Hillman, Sarah Fink, Jerome Foreman, Morris H. Garfunkel, Louis Goldfein, Herbert Josiah Goldsmith, Myron Dove Greenberg, Rabbi Barry H. Green, Henry Harold Halpern, Seymour L. Hanfling, M.D., Bennett Harris, Estelle Rosalind Hyman, Jack Kaplan, Bessie K., Doris Lichtman, Dr. Isidore G. Liss, Karen Zissou Magidson, Henrietta Mandelbaum, Lawrence Barry Mink, Israel Nagrod, Jacob Daniel Nussbaum, Lucille Flusser Pollock, Mayor Posner, Celia Skaratowski, Gertrude Sperber, Milton Spitz, Cantor Norman Summers, Mildred Lester Wexler. We join together now in words of the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel. As we say together, amen. We come to the conclusion of our service. I'll encourage you to check our website to make sure that you are seeing all of the things that are upcoming. I'm sure we will have lots more info in the weeks to come about how you can reach us, whether our programs will be happening in person or virtually. Our building has been closed for the last week, but we will be reopening next week. So please do follow your emails to make sure that you know where to find us and what is going on. We have lots coming up in the new year, and we are really excited to share in all of that programming with you. We have guest speakers, guest musicians, lots of opportunities to engage, and we are hoping that this year will bring lots more togetherness than the one that has preceded it. And as we prepare to conclude, we will join together in Kiddush and Motzi on this evening. So we will lift our Kiddush cups. Whether you are beginning your festivities now or you're waiting a few hours, I will wish you all a very sweet l'chaim for this new year, and we'll join together in Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit. Ki hu yom techila l'mikra'e kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim. B'shabbat kodeshecha, be'ahava uratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mikadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. I do not have a challah to bless because the challah is currently in the oven upstairs, so I will invite all of you to take your chalot and you can bless them on my behalf, and we will sing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yavarach et amo v'shalom. Dear God, as we enter this new year as one sacred community, we ask that you grant us strength in our hearts, in our minds, and in our bodies as we embark on the new year ahead. Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and Happy New Year. We hope to see lots more of you in 2022. We hope you have a beautiful